Imagine waking up to a shocking HOA notice claiming you owe $50,000 for unauthorized shoreline work, even though you never touched a single rock on your beach. That moment wasn't just stressful, it was enraging. But what the HOA didn't know was that my entire shoreline had been under continuous time-lapse surveillance for months, quietly recording every movement day and night. And those recordings revealed a truth so explosive that it would shatter their accusation and expose the real culprit behind the sabotage. Karen, the loudest, strictest, power-hungry member of our HOA board. The story truly began weeks earlier. When Karen confronted me during a community meeting about the color of my house, she insisted it violated the neighborhood aesthetic, even though the rule never existed. When I calmly refused to repaint my home to match her bland beige vision, she glared at me like I had personally insulted her authority. From that moment, she became obsessed. I would catch her filming my property, pacing along my fence line, and pretending to inspect areas nowhere near HOA jurisdiction. It felt like she was waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. Days before the false fine appeared, strange disturbances started happening on my shoreline. Rocks were shifted into unnatural formations. Deep grooves carved patterns across the sand, as though someone had dragged heavy tools through the area. A section of my retaining wall suddenly collapsed overnight in a suspiciously clean break. At first, I blamed weather or erosion, but everything felt deliberate, strategic even. I sensed someone was setting me up. Then came Monday morning. Karen marched up my driveway with a clipboard and sunglasses, so large they covered half her face. She didn't knock politely. She hammered her fist against my door like she was leading a raid. When I opened it, she delivered her rehearsed speech, dripping with smugness, announcing the $50,000 fine for damage directly caused by my reckless interference with protected shoreline boundaries. She even waved printed photos in my face, claiming the HOA drone captured the destruction. But the patterns in those photos didn't match natural erosion. They matched the disturbances. I had already noticed someone had created the damage intentionally, and someone wanted me to pay dearly for it. Karen believed she had cornered me, but she had no idea that my hidden cameras had captured everything. Her late-night visits, her dragging tools across the sand, and her staging the entire scene. What she didn't realize was that I had prepared for exactly this kind of petty sabotage. I had gathered every clip, every timestamp, every angle needed to prove my innocence and reveal her lies. The moment of truth was already approaching fast for everyone to see. When Karen delivered the outrageous fine, I didn't argue. Instead, I calmly closed the door and walked straight to my office, where the surveillance system stored thousands of time-lapse frames documenting every second of shoreline activity for months. I already suspected Karen, but I needed undeniable proof. Within minutes, the footage confirmed everything. Karen sneaking onto my property after midnight, dragging a shovel, kicking rocks, smashing the retaining wall, and photographing the staged destruction like she was collecting trophies. I gathered every clip and organized them chronologically into a single file titled Shoreline Sabotage. Each timestamp showed Karen in crystal clear detail, moving with the confidence of someone convinced she would never be caught. But she underestimated my preparation. I exported the footage, printed stills, and drafted a formal complaint to counter her fabricated accusation. By sunrise, everything was ready. The next morning, I headed to the emergency HOA meeting Karen had demanded. She arrived early, wearing her signature fake authority smile, acting like the hero who had finally caught me. The board members whispered among themselves, flipping through the photos she had circulated. But when I entered the room with a calm confidence she didn't expect, her smile flickered. She didn't know I had brought the truth. When the meeting began, Karen stood up and launched into a dramatic speech about property, integrity, ecological responsibility, and reckless owners. Her voice trembled with fake outrage. She claimed I destroyed critical shoreline barriers and demanded immediate disciplinary action. The board nodded along until I quietly reached into my bag and placed a small flash drive on the table. The room fell silent. I said nothing. I simply pressed play on the projector. The footage began with a wide shot of the untouched shoreline under moonlight. Then the second frame showed Karen slipping into view, dragging a heavy toolbox. Gasps rippled across the room. The following clips revealed her methodically shoveling sand, kicking boulders, smashing the wall, and posing for her ridiculous evidence photos. The board members stared in disbelief. Karen's face drained of color. She whispered something unintelligible as the truth played in crystal clear sequence. When the final frame froze on Karen holding her phone like a trophy, the room erupted. The board president demanded an explanation, but Karen had none. She stumbled over excuses, blaming lighting, angles, even impossible camera glitches. No one believed her. The evidence was absolute. The sabotage fine was immediately dismissed, and the board scheduled a formal misconduct hearing. Karen glared at me with a mixture of humiliation and fury, but the damage to her authority was irreversible. As the meeting ended, I realized this battle was only the beginning, because Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly, and her retaliation would be far from subtle. Karen didn't speak to me for 2 days after the explosive HOA meeting, but her silence was nothing more than the calm before her next storm. I knew her personality too well. She wasn't just angry, she was humiliated. And Karen was the type who would burn down an entire neighborhood rather than accept responsibility for her actions. So when strange things started happening again, I wasn't surprised. It began with anonymous complaint letters shoved under my door at night. They accused me of everything from excessive noise to shadow pollution, a term so absurd. I laughed out loud. Then a mysterious parking violation notice appeared on my truck, even though it was parked in my own driveway. Within days, Karen filed 3 separate HOA complaints claiming I was creating unsafe conditions by having security cameras. The irony was almost poetic. But her harassment escalated further. One evening, I caught her standing on the sidewalk, staring at my house while talking on the phone, glancing at my windows like she was searching for weak spots. The next morning, she spread rumors around the neighborhood, claiming I had altered the shoreline footage using AI manipulation. Several neighbors approached me with awkward, half-believing expressions, clearly influenced by her theatrics. Karen was rebuilding her narrative, hoping anyone would take her side. The HOA president, exhausted by the chaos, scheduled her misconduct hearing for the end of the week. That announcement sent Karen spiraling. She began knocking on doors, lobbying for support, insisting she was the real victim. But her desperate attempts only made her look unstable. Meanwhile, I focused on strengthening my defense. I organized additional camera angles, environmental reports, and even satellite imagery, confirming the shoreline had remained untouched until her sabotage. 2 days before the hearing, I received a suspicious email from an unfamiliar HOA subcommittee claiming they needed access to my property for environmental verification. The wording felt off. When I checked the board roster, that committee didn't even exist. Minutes later, my cameras alerted me. Karen was lurking near the side of my house, holding a clipboard with the fake committee name printed on it. She was trying to frame me again. I stepped outside before she could attempt anything else. The moment she saw me, she froze, spinning a weak excuse about routine checks. I calmly told her she was trespassing and that all her actions were documented. Her expression twisted, part fear, part rage. She stormed off, muttering threats about fixing everything at the hearing. That was the moment I realized Karen wasn't just trying to avoid consequences. She was preparing a final, desperate attack, one that could damage far more than my reputation if I didn't stay ahead of her. The morning of the misconduct, hearing arrived with the kind of tense stillness that makes every sound feel sharper. I woke early, reviewed my evidence one last time, and watched the shoreline through my window. Everything looked peaceful now, untouched, exactly as it had been before Karen's sabotage. Yet I couldn't shake the sense that she still had one more trick waiting, a final attempt to twist the truth. Before facing consequences she could no longer outrun. When I arrived at the HOA hall, several neighbors were already gathered outside. Some nodded to me quietly, clearly aware of everything that had unfolded. Others whispered nervously, caught between curiosity and disbelief. Karen stood near the entrance, pacing like a cornered animal. Her hair was frizzed from stress. Her clipboard clutched so tightly her knuckles were white. The moment she saw me, she stiffened, then plastered on a smile that looked painfully forced. Inside, the board assembled with a seriousness I had never seen from them before. The president opened the hearing by outlining the allegations against Karen: property sabotage, falsification of evidence, harassment, and fraudulent fines. Karen immediately interrupted, claiming she possessed new proof that everything was part of a misunderstanding. Her voice cracked slightly, but she tried to sound confident. Then she reached into her folder and produced several printed photos, insisting they showed me damaging the shoreline. The images were blurry, dark, and clearly fabricated. Before the board could even comment, I calmly requested permission to respond. With their approval, I connected my hard drive to the projector and played the polished compilation of surveillance footage. Every frame was crisp, clear, undeniable. Karen dragging tools, toppling rocks, smashing the wall, and photographing the staged destruction. There was no room for interpretation, no shadows to blame, No angles to distort. The truth filled the room like a tidal wave. Board members exchanged stunned glances. One asked Karen if she had anything to say in her defense. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her face turned pale, then blotchy red. Finally, she stammered something about being set up, but no one believed her. The president announced the board's unanimous decision. Karen was removed from her position effective immediately, fined heavily for damages, and barred from approaching my property again. As the hearing ended, Karen stormed out of the building, her reputation shattered. Neighbors approached me with apologies, relief, and gratitude. For the first time in months, the weight pressing on my home finally lifted. Walking back to my shoreline, I realized something important. I hadn't just cleared my name. I had exposed a bully who had controlled the neighborhood far too long. And with Karen gone, peace finally returned to the place I loved. Did you enjoy watching Karen get exposed? Smash that like button. Drop a comment with what you would have done in my shoes. And don't forget to subscribe for more crazy HOA revenge stories.